Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this planning committee. For the benefit of those watching on our YouTube channel, members of the committee are present in the chamber and these members will be voting on proposals this evening. The meeting will also be recorded via MS Teams in case there are any technical issues. Other members of the council are also in attendance and/or participating via MS Teams and can take part in any discussions, ask questions, but not vote. Your attention is drawn to agenda item 1, which sets out the guidance on how meetings will be conducted, including the ground rules. Your attention is drawn to the rules for public speaking in respect of planning applications and the committee's procedure rules in the council's constitution, which apply to this planning committee meeting. Before we start with the formal business, we will confirm attendance of voting members by doing a roll call.
Thank you, Chair. When I call your name, please, can you confirm that you are present? Councillor Palmer?
Present.
We've received apologies from Councillor Cannon, who's been substituted by Councillor Williams.
Present.
Councillor Clokey?
Present.
We have received apologies from Councillor Dalton, who's been substituted by Councillor Chapman.
Present.
Councillor Davis?
Present.
Councillor Hickmott?
Present.
Councillor Hood?
Present.
Councillor Hudson?
Present.
Councillor King?
Present.
Councillor Pilgrim?
Present.
Councillor Tatton?
Present.
Councillor Thornewell?
Present.
Councillor Tunstall?
Present.
I can confirm we have 13 voting members present.
Thank you. I'd like now to ask the officers to introduce yourselves. You want to start with to my left and toss the top, and then we'll go for the bottom row.
Good evening, members. James Bailey, Head of Planning.
Good evening, I'm Sally Wang, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening. I'm Ian Williams, Development Manager.
Good evening, Josh Kwok, Development Management Team Leader.
Susan Field, Principal Planning Officer.
James Moisey, Strategic Sites Delivery Officer.
Hello, Melissa Vento, Associate Transport Planet Project Centre, Independent Consultant, Highways Consultant, working on behalf of Cambridge and Malling.
And Mr. Stacey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, Rory Stracey, a solicitor and legal advisor to the committee of Trowse and Hamlins.
Thank you. Members of the public, applicant and/or agent wishing to address the planning committee are present in the chamber and will be invited to speak at the appropriate time. The speaking time limit of 3 minutes for each application continues to be applied, and public speakers are unable to participate in any discussion of the application. Okay, let's move to our first application. We have sorry, I've jumped a whole section. I'm so eager to get going today. We've gone through the apologies and we've had notification of substitute members. Declarations of interest from anybody? No, thank you. Minutes. Can I confirm that the minutes of the last 2 meetings are correct? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, we're off. So our first application that we are having come back to us is 2 to 12 Avery Avenue in Tunbridge, and Josh is going to be talking to us about that one. And we'd like to go first.
Just before we start on 2 to 12 Avery Avenue, just to inform members that a new MPPF was published on Monday. In the supplementary report that you received this evening is the assessment of officers in terms of the new MPPF policies in relation to the applications that you're going to hear tonight. Officers have gone through them, and the policies have not altered any of the officer recommendations in respect to the applications. But also in terms of that, just to say that the conditions that you would see on your decision, draft decision notices, we would just ask the committee that should the motion to approve in line with the officer recommendation is carried, that we also have delegated authority to change the requisite old paragraph numbers to the new policies within the MPPF as well.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Chair. The application tonight is for the alteration, extension and change of use of existing building to a mixed use comprising 34 apartments with associated parking, refurbishment of existing gym at number 2 to 12 Avery Avenue, Tonbridge. Site has twice been granted planning permission for residential development in 2018 and 2019 respectively. The application site boundary is shown in red in the location plan. The building concerns it in the corner plot. Development to the west of River Long Road is within Tonbridge Conservation Area. The application is returned to the Planning Committee because of the late stage review. Details in the original heads of terms is now proposed for removal. All other aspects of the proposal remain the same. The proposed development would be 5-story, comprising an entrance hall, undercroft car park, bike and bin store alongside separate commercial units on ground floor and 34 flats across floors. It will be faced in brick, predominantly decorated further by a mix of cedar texture cladding and porcelain stone effects tiles, as you can see in the elevational drawing. So these are the elevations facing High Street and also facing Avery Avenue. And these are the street scene of Avery Avenue, River Long Road, and High Street, respectively. This is a car and cycle parking arrangement. There are 16 spaces for car, 34 spaces for bikes. So these are some photos taken during the site visits. As you can see, the proposal has got permission for extension, and the development, unfortunately, has paused recently. These are the photographs taken from the site surroundings. Now these are the images of the approved scheme. One was approved in 2018 and the other one in 2019. So the matters most relevant for consideration is whether the removal of the late stage review is acceptable in planning terms. The late stage review was initially recommended by the council's appointed viability consultant and was agreed to by the applicants voluntarily at the time of initiating the legal process. However, the applicant has now withdrawn from this agreement for the reasons set out in the supplementary reports. While the removal of the late stage review is unfortunate, there is no strong policy justification for the local planning authority to insist upon its retention. Therefore, the absence of such a review does not render the current proposal unacceptable in policy terms. Concerning other matters, the principle of development of the site has already been established, and the current scheme therefore remains acceptable. The building would be of a sympathetic build form, design and appearance. It would harmonize with the surroundings, will cause no harm to the setting of Tonbridge Conservation Area. The car parking provisions fall below the adopted maximum parking standard. However, the identified shortfall is unlikely to cause substantial harm to highway safety and parking conditions in this instance. In addition, policy compliant cycle parking spaces would be available to the future residents of the development. The site also benefits from an existing vehicle access from River Long Road, so there is no access issue. Financial contributions secured through this development proposal fall below that requested by the relevant consultees, but the shortfall is adequately justified by a financial viability appraisal, which has been independently reviewed by the council's viability consultant. As such, the planning obligations currently on offer is considered on balance acceptable. Other less significant planning matters are already addressed in the Planning Committee reports and supplementary statement. In conclusion, while certain aspects of the proposal fall below the policy expectation, when considered as a whole, it still represents sustainable development that assists in delivering key objectives of the local plan and the national planning policy framework. Such is recommended for approval, subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have one public speaker, the agent, Alison Knight.
Good evening, councillors. I'd like to start by thanking you and your officers for your patience on this one. My client is the official receiver. This is an amendment to the application which was granted permission by the Area 1 Planning Committee in October last year and came back for a minor amendment in June this year. The site has a complex history, with the previous developer going bust partway through the building process, which resulted in this prominent town centre site being in a terrible state for some years and a financial loss of several £1 million. This application is an adjustment to make sure the finances work so that building can go ahead. My client voluntarily agreed to a late stage review. However, it became clear that this could make the project unviable and therefore will become unsaleable and cannot be built. If granted, the site can be sold and developed. Your officer, Josh, concludes that there is an absence of strong, explicit policy for requiring a late stage review and recommends approval of this application. My clients really want to enable the building and completion of this site as soon as possible so it can be cleaned up, the decaying structure and vermin can be dealt with, and attractive, sustainable, high-quality homes can be provided. By supporting the amended application this evening, followed by a swift issuing of the planning permission, the project can commence within a couple of weeks, as there is a financial rescue package agreed and a development team ready and waiting to commence. There are no statutory consultee objections, and your officer is recommending approval. Therefore, I hope you will support your officer's recommendation to approve the application before you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hood, you originally called this in. Do you wish to speak at all this evening?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I have to say that this is really very disappointing. The behaviour of the applicant in this case is really poor in my opinion. We've heard that actually we don't have the relevant policies in order to prevent this reneging of the agreement for the late stage review. And I have to say, I think it's bad faith on the part of the applicant. We have no mechanism now to confirm whether further contributions should be forthcoming should circumstances change during the time frame of this development. And what we really have here is a version of corporate welfare. We've got an applicant who's decided that we can't have any affordable housing here. And yet it's a whole story bigger than the original applications that we saw. It's a third bigger. And we've seen the developer contributions that we had expected to see for a much smaller development absolutely slashed. So we've got a situation here where we've got development which isn't mitigating for the effects of its own development. And the local community is going to have to come up with the money to meet that shortfall. So I think this is pretty disgraceful behaviour. But there's nothing we can do about it because, as we all know, the planning system's completely broken.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ask a question really about the late stage review. I do share Councillor Hood's concerns. I was just interested actually reading all of the committee papers again and looking at St Andrew's Close, that it refers at 6.18 to 78 to 80 High Street, Tunbridge, which went to appeal, and the inspector supported a late stage review. So I just wanted to understand what, because there wouldn't have been, I think that was in about 21, 22. So we wouldn't have had a policy then. We don't have a policy now. So I'm not quite sure what the difference is and why, if we dug our heels in and said, no, we're not having this, and it went to appeal, why we wouldn't be in the same position as that other case. So I just needed a bit of explanation, please.
Would you like to come back?
Unfortunately, I don't have the details of that particular application, but as you're well aware, planning law requires the local planning authority to approve applications are in accordance with the development plan policies, unless material considerations dictate otherwise. The application as it was submitted without the late stage review is acceptable in those policy terms. This officer's opinions that it would be, there's no policy reason to refuse the application, so it'd be a very difficult appeal to justify and potentially could lead us to costs as well, because we haven't got a policy on which to even nationally to adhere that reason for refusal to. I don't know, like I said, I don't know the details of the other application. It may have been that there were other circumstances which the inspector making that decision felt it was necessary in that particular instance. But the advice to the committee is don't have that any policy on which to refuse this application. And so it would put us as the council as a local plan authority in a very difficult position.
Councillor Pilgrim.
Thank you, Chair. Just really want to echo what Mark said. When this was first come to Area 1 last year, when it was approved, I voted against it. I was against the idea of no affordable housing, very little in the way of contribution towards the local community. The residents that we represent expect, I think, any development to bring benefits to not just the local area, the Judd area, but for the wider community. Purely just not for the developer, for greed. I am struggling with this one, to be honest. I don't know what is best to do with it. I want the area redeveloped. I want it done because it is an eyesore. But at what expense do we have to go through to not have anything for our local residents? How can you stand on their doorstep and sort of look them in the face and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. We're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm not at all happy with the state of affairs on this, on the removal of this clause. I find it very difficult. However, I do understand now that I know who the applicant is. This is the receiver. He has a legal duty to maximise the return from all the assets that he's got. It's not a case of sort of trying to make a little bit more profit. It is trying to pay off debts of the person who's gone bust. And I must own that this has gone on for a very, very long time, in which we've had a terrible, terrible eyesore in the middle of Tunbridge. It is not a good site. It's crawling with vermin, and there's a lot of problems with it. I'm afraid we're going to have to bite the bullet on this and accept the fact that this is the least worst option we can accept. I therefore propose the officer that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Can I have a seconder for that? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Mehmet, if you wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair.
I have a proposal to accept the recommendation, Councillor Mehmet. So are you seconding, or you just would like to? No, you can't, can you? Because you're not part of the committee.
Okay. If I can just say, I think my view would be, you know, I agree with what's been said tonight. It's far from ideal, but I think we have to remember that a late stage review mechanism wouldn't necessarily guarantee any affordable housing would have been provided anyway. We might have gone through that process, and at the end it might have said, well, actually build costs have increased and it's still not viable. So I think, as other members have said, I'm not happy with it, but that site has been an eyesore for a very long time, and I think we need that restored and sorted out. So I would suggest to the committee that unfortunately we reluctantly accept it, and try and get some progress on that site and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tracy, I have seen your hand, but there are a couple of hands I'm going to go to first before I come to you. Councillor Tartan, did you wish to speak or second? We
Just speak very quickly that if we are looking to approve, and I do feel uncomfortable, but I understand that the position we're in, would it be reasonable to reduce the commencement time from 3 years, bearing in mind that it's been sitting there looking a complete eyesore? And I think we'd just like to get it done. We'd like to see the work start and get this sorted out.
I think the agent actually said that once the paperwork's done, it can be started within a couple of weeks.
She did. But if we've got that in the decision notice that is a shorter period, then that is a real incentive to get the work started.
Okay, Mr. Williams or Mr. Potter?
So the implementation period is actually specified by the Town Country Planning Act. So it's not discretionary. So we can't reduce the implementation period, which has been specified under the Town Country Planning Act. But it sounds like the applicant does look to develop the site, as soon as possible, and there seems to be an intention to do that.
Councillor Pilgrim, you had your hand. Are you seconding or?
No, just want to say something very quickly. Last year when this was approved back in October, we was told that it was going to start within a month. Can we have a guarantee that this will start within a month and it's not going to be pushed back and pushed back and pushed back all the time? Thank you.
Mr. Bailey would like to come in on this item.
Yeah, just to come in on that last point. Yes, Josh is totally correct that it is specified in terms of timeframes, but should members of this committee, and it passes the 6 tests, feel that a shorter time period for implementation is warranted, then the Act does allow you to impose a shorter time limit on that. There is that ability, but as I said, you still have to meet the test, because it's a default. In most circumstances, you wouldn't even need to apply the implementation time because it's set out in the Act. But there are instances where, we haven't got a 5-year housing land supply, where you in this room have approved shorter or longer time periods set out in the Act. You didn't approve it, but Bradbourne had a 13-year effectively extended time period. So there is that ability, should you so wish, but you need to be careful that it's in a receiver's hands. Obviously, I don't know the details of the site, so you still need to make sure that it's reasonable, precise, and it meets the test that you're going to impose on that condition. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that point before we go a bit further on the debate. That's okay.
Councillor King, are you seconding, or I'm still looking for a seconder at the moment?
I am. I'm going to explain briefly why. I share all the concerns that the local members have. I think I just want to see some value add from this scheme. And I think Councillor Davies summed it up very well. We're in a cul-de-sac, rock and a hard place, all that stuff. I think we need to move forward and get some benefit from this because it is a receiver situation. So I do so second it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a proposal and seconder before us. Sorry, we need to, no. Proposal and seconder to accept the officer's recommendation on. Sorry, again, I'm sorry. Mrs. Tracy, before we go any further.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to remind members, I know that there's been some mention of the applicant being a receiver. I just want to remind members that the identity of the applicant is not generally a material planning consideration, and they should treat this application on the planning policy merits, which officers have advised as per the committee report.
Thank you. So I'm going back. I have a seconder and a a proposal and a seconder. We should be voting on this, Councillor Cokie.
I believe procedurally we debate after proposer and seconder. So I think it's in order to speak now. I just wanted to ask: has the applicant provided any positive proof that the late stage viability review makes this unviable? Because obviously, if the late stage viability review, it's a bit of an unknown in the future. If they make a lot of money on it, hooray! If they don't, they don't. And we either get something or we don't. So if the viability assessment as it stands were to work itself out, the late stage viability review wouldn't do anything. If it makes more money than expected, then they would be making a contribution, but then obviously it would be viable to make a contribution because they made more money than expected. So the only reason not to have a late stage viability review in there I can see is that the percentage upside, the upside that they might get is sufficiently important to the financing of the project. And that might be true depending on the specific nature and numbers in the late stage viability review, but they should be able to demonstrate that, I would have thought. So have they demonstrated that, or have they just turned around and said, we don't want it?
Do you want to answer that? There you go.
So no, well, short answer is no. They have not evidence that the late stage review mechanism would undermine the viability of a scheme. But the questions we need to consider is whether it's in first place justifiable to impose a late stage review mechanism. And you ask the question whether the late stage review mechanism will actually bring you some benefits. Now, bearing in mind late stage review just bring the potential of having some gain from the developments through windfall, but then you wouldn't get 100% gain. It would be split between the council and the developer. So there is no actual guarantee that you would get money for additional contribution through the late stage review mechanism. So first question is it justifiable based on the policies that we have to impose that late stage review? And secondly, if it does have policy justification, then you consider whether, the next question, whether they have evidence that the late stage review removal would benefit would improve the viability position of the scheme. So I hope that answers your question. Now, in relation to Councillor Tatton's query about that particular application, now what I can tell you is the application you refer to is a retirement home scheme. So it's materially different in nature and characteristic to the one before us, which is just a normal housing scheme. So the viability consideration is obviously different. Profit margin is also different between a retirement home scheme and a normal housing scheme. So I guess, yes, while it's on that occasion, Inspector did accept a late stage review, that was specifically to the nature of that particular proposal. So I wouldn't be able to sort of clarify on behalf of the inspector who has already made the decision. But what I can say is the proposal before you is materially different from the one that you referred to. So it might well come to a different conclusion should we insist upon the retention of the late stage review. I hope that sort of makes sense.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? Councillor Tatton.
I think if we've got the proposal, I'd like, if possible, to include a reduced time frame. I don't know whether 18 months would be reasonable. I think that is reasonable, or a reduced commencement period, because of the time and the history of the site, and it's sitting there and it's a mess. We just like to get it started and give some encouragement.
Councillor Williams.
I think the thing is, we any time frame has to be reasonable. council, as the LPA, has the ability to insist on developers completing developments. From what I understand from Mr. Quat, the development's already been, the previous permission, shall we say, have been implemented on the site. So they've started works there. The question then is really, if they get planning permission for this, it's technically been implemented, so we could insist on that. Personally, I think if you are looking to reduce it, a 2-year timeframe would be acceptable. But as you've heard from the agent or the applicant, they want to get on and develop this site. And there's no reason for us not to question that, because they are a receiver, and any delays in development generally do cost money to developers.
Councillor Tatton.
If Ian thinks that 2 years is reasonable, then I would be happy with that.
So how would we add that into our conditions? Councillor Hood.
If you need a seconder for that, I'll second that. What really worries me is that this could be a process unless we have some kind of time limit where they just keep coming back again and again, trying to remove the rest of the rest of the miserly developer contributions that we've got.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Could I also ask that officers have delegated authority to change the detailing of the MPPF conditions as well, including a resolution?
So we have proposed on a seconder, but we would like to add the delegated powers for the MPPF and a condition for timing that we will leave to the officers to implement. Is that everybody? No, I'm going to say we're going to have a new proposal. Right. I will propose that we accept the officers' recommendations as on page 30, but also additionally includes. Oh, right.
Or we amend.
Yeah. So, Councillor Davies, to make this simple, do you accept into your proposal the additional conditions that have been?
I have no problems with that.
Councillor King. So the proposal is to accept the recommendation on 1.10 of the covering report, page 30, for reasons set out in the new report. Recommendation that the application be approved subject to the same terms and conditions. Additional conditions are for delegated powers for timing and for the new MPPF, and removing the late stage review. Can I take a vote on that? Would we roll call or show of hands? All those in favour? All those approved? Councillor Cokie. So for our YouTube viewers, that was 12 for and 1 against, and that is granted. Thank you. We move on to our second application of the evening, which is land south of St Andrews, which again is Josh and Melissa will be assisting on the highways. And Ian, do you want to put in the delegated powers a bit again?
Yes, so I'd just like to ask committee again with the delegated powers for the MPPF on this one, but also just to point out that the reason for this coming back to committee, because it had a resolution to refuse, that during the debate some misinformation was provided. St Andrews Close is in fact a adopted road. Officers using the Kent County Council website, it was pointing us to say it was unadopted. So it has been recently adopted. We've spoken to Highways and they've confirmed this as well. The other issues were in respect to the tracking, and I think whether or not it mounted the pavement or not. The applicant again has sort of just confirmed that it's not mounting the pavement. I believe it's the cab at the front which oversails the pavement when they turn. So given these sort of misconceptions, just to ensure that any decision that the committee makes is not reviewable, as well as being correct, and also just to prevent us from incurring costs for considering misinformation, officers have brought this back to allow the committee to reconsider it. I believe Josh will give a short presentation for those who weren't here in relation to the application, so that can just be considered by the committee.
Josh, off you go.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for the erection of a Part 2-story, Part 3-story building to provide Class C3 retirement home comprising 50 residential units with associated communal facilities, parking, landscaping, access, and associated works on land to the south of St Andrews Close, Aylesford. Members resolved to refuse this application for inadequate car parking provision previously. The application site boundary is shown in red in the location plan. It is within the urban area of Aylesford and form part of the historic ground of Preston Hall, which is Grade 2 listed. It also forms part of wider housing allocation under policy H3 of the Development Plan Allocation DPD. These are some images of the proposed retirement home. At the top is the front elevation facing towards St Andrews Close, while the bottom shows the eastern side elevation. Again, the rear elevation is shown at the top, and that elevation faces toward London Road. The western side elevation is shown at the bottom of the slide. The building roughly follows an L-shaped formation with car parking provided at the front, the landscaping buffer to the side and rear. There is a total of 38 spaces at the front of the building. The image to the left shows the retirement village when viewed from the tree-lined avenue. The one to the right shows how it would appear when looking from the other end of St Andrews Close. These are some photos taken from St Andrews Close. These photos show the current condition of the sites. These photos shows view from within the site and also junction to London Road. These photos are taken from the elevated car park on the opposite side of London Road. This is just an aerial view of the site and the surroundings, with the red dot showing St Andrews Close. So the principal development for housing is acceptable as it's allocated for housing under policy H3 of the Development Land Allocation DPD. It was granted permission for 11 townhouses. The site is within the urban area of Aylesford, where local shops and services are available. Therefore, it's in a sustainable location for residential developments. The quantum of development would be acceptable and in keeping with the prevailing building height, density, and pattern across the wider housing allocation. The proposal would cause no harm to the significance of the Grade 2 listed Preston Hall or to the residential amenity of the neighbouring occupiers. Turning to highway safety and parking, the site is in a sustainable location where walking, cycling, and public transport are realistic alternatives to private motor vehicles. The local highway authority is satisfied that the proposed parking and access arrangement and raised no objections subject to conditions. The refuse vehicle access is not ideal, and the concerns raised by the council's waste services are noted. However, as the proposal would largely utilize the existing turning head, the shortcoming could not reasonably substantiate a ground for refusal. The proposal is also recognized by the planning practice guidance as a form of shelter housing. The proposed level of parking provision for this shelter housing scheme is further justified in Appendix Appendix E of the transport statement. In terms of planning obligation, the proposal will provide a financial contribution of £370,000 toward the items listed in the heads of terms. It also meets the statutory requirement for 10% biodiversity net gain. The lead local flood authority raised no objections to the proposal on flood risk and drainage ground. Overall, the proposal represents sustainable development and will contribute positively to the supply of new homes on land allocated for housing. It will not give rise to any significant adverse impacts, and the residual impacts would be effectively mitigated through the recommended planning conditions. Therefore, the proposal is still recommended for approval.
Thank you. Do I have anybody wishing to speak on this? Councillor Davis.
My principal, I'm very, very pleased that the adoption of the road has been confirmed, and that does significantly change some of the reasons that I voted against it last time. But I am still concerned about the parking. I want to just read 2 paragraphs of the Kent Design Guide on this. This is retirement communities and continuing care facilities. Research has highlighted that older people are travelling more than they did previously in the context of the ageing population. Comparison by the National Travel Survey results show that the average number of car trips and miles travelled for those aged 60 plus has increased over the past few years. Car ownership levels for the over 60s are also higher than in previous generations. It is clear that people, this is the second paragraph, it's clear that older people are active for longer than they have historically been. As such, models of care are also changing, with the move towards retirement communities and continuing care facilities for the over 50s. Such facilities are typical care home parking standards are often insufficient. That is the Kent Design Guide for parking saying that. And in this case, we have gone for a care home with resident wardens. There is a resident warden from 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, but it's not really a care home where people are in large measure bedbound. And I'm very, very concerned that actually the 38 that we should have gone for at least, and the table 1 C3 criteria of 1 car per accommodation, as opposed to the 38 which have been provided. I do accept that, and this is a rural setting. The next step up is an urban setting, and whilst people are doing their best to infill Aylesford, it is still a rural setting. But I think that 50 should be considered a minimum. That said, we are missing 12 car parking spaces, and those car parking spaces are in all probability going to go either into St Andrew's Close or onto Culpeper Road. And as such, I think either way, they're going to make the ambience of of British Legion Village more cramped and more crowded. I have that problem in all my rural villages where cars have created this sort of problem. It is a question now of whether we should refuse for the absence of those 12 cars or accept this development now, I think. That is my reading of the situation. Thank you.
Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Member.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just quite concerned about the amount of traffic that's going to generate onto the London Road and Hall Road as well. Living in Aylesford previously, I just know how clogged up those roads. And the photos that Josh showed us, you can actually see the London Road actually jammed up, you know. And there's also concerns about the dust cart as well, mounting the curb as it's going in. And, you know, yeah, those are my concerns.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. I can say what my feeling was from the last meeting, and I think it was a fairly collective one, that the parking was totally inadequate. Many of the flats have no parking whatsoever. There were 2 parking spaces for visitors, which is completely inadequate. As I did explain, many of the people that are 60 and will be considerably older will be getting not just visitors, but carers coming on a regular basis. So I think we are not embracing the real world with these sorts of developments. And yes, you could say to people, well, don't buy it if you don't want it, if you can't sort of live under those conditions. But it is fairly unreasonable of us. And I guess what I'd like more advice from the officers of what flexibility we have, because I think that's a genuine concern about this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just add my bit in before you speak? 50 units, 27 one bed, 23 two bed, from the age of 55, I think. I'm sure most of us here in this room could qualify to go and live in this facility. And I know that I'm not going to stop driving for a fair old while. I too think that 38 parking spaces, no allowance for cleaning staff or the manager or visitors or carers. Yeah, I think I'm with Councillor King and my other councillors in that I think this is inadequate. Thank you.
So obviously, you know, at the previous committee, it was felt that RC3 should be applied rather than the sheltered housing levels. To let the committee know why officers have come to the conclusion that it would be acceptable is that the site is in a sustainable location, so somewhere where people who wouldn't necessarily need a motor vehicle to live their everyday life. You've obviously got the Sainsbury's opposite. There is a health centre in close connection and everything else like that. And I believe that's why highways have come to that conclusion in respect to the parking standard. Having said that, it is within the committee's gift to apply whichever standard they believe is the correct standard to apply to this particular development. So that's basically the advice which I gave last time at planning committee, and that would be the advice here. So it's all hinges on the sustainability of the site, but obviously I do take the comments that members have made in respect to the car ownership.
So, Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on that, I love it when we do try and apply a blanket analysis. I mean, it is said that Tonbridge, for example, is a sustainable situation, which it is because it has a station, and that people should only move there and live in the flats if they don't have a car. But that isn't what happens. And we live in a semi-rural environment. People want to get around. Our bus services are limited, to be generous. And so that is the realistic situation. And I think embracing that lifestyle, this is inadequate. But I don't want that we should impose something which a legal counsel would then say to us, it won't stand up because you don't have a right to say that. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hood.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Davis read out the same passage from the Kent parking standards as I read out at the last meeting, and it means that we have to be mindful of the kind of development. And I think the comments that have been made, this isn't a care home. There's some shit. There's going to be someone there 9 to 5. That's a very different prospect. So we've been this council and it has been bitten too many times by inadequate car parking on schemes that we've approved, and we now have, after years and years of not having the parking standards that we needed and we need to back us up, we now have that.
Thank you. Councillor Tatton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm still not happy with the parking. I think although, you know, you could say it's reasonably well located for the bus stop, You know, so people might get the bus. They may walk over to the shops. They're not going to get on their bikes. They're not going to go anywhere on a bike outside the village because it's just too dangerous on the roads. But I think this is a high-end development, and I think people are going to have disposable income. And as you pointed out, if you can carry on driving, you will carry on driving. And if it's people in their retirement, they're going to want to go places, do things, and the car will be the last thing they give up. So I don't think that the parking arrangements at the moment are adequate, and I'm not inclined to support it. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, would you like to come back?
So what I'm hearing, well, what I'm hearing here is the parking's inadequate. Obviously, that would be to the expense of landscaping around the development. However, you know, it's something. From my experience, I think parking's quite a difficult reason to spend necessarily, but it's something that we could explore with the applicant and see whether or not they are prepared to provide more car parking, like I say, at the expense of some of the landscaping. But it may well then provide a development which would be acceptable to members if that's the only issue that we're looking at. And I would suggest potentially, you know, given it's a major, we measured on our KPIs with that, as well as sort of officer time. That might be a reason to defer the application. It's just a suggestion, but I thought I'd just put it there for the committee.
Okay. I think nobody's actually arguing about the building. It is the car parking that we are concerned about. I'd like to put a proposal that we defer this application and we allow officers to speak to the applicant and see whether they can come to some agreement to allay our concerns. Councillor Tan.
Second that.
Can I show of hands? Unanimous. So for YouTube, the application has been deferred to come back to us at a later date. Thank you. So we're on to our third application. Land north of Lodge Farmhouse, High Street, Aylesford, and this is Miss Field.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks the erection of 2 commercial buildings falling in class at B8 with associated external storage, including storage racking, vehicle parking and associated works. This is the site plan in front of you. You've got Ball Lane here to the east. To the north is existing access. That access is also served by Aylesford Sewage Treatment Works. And to the south is Lodge Farm and the Friars. This next slide shows the site in the context of the wider site. So the wider site is this triangle-shaped site. The whole site has permission granted for the construction of hard standing to enable B8 open storage of vehicles and the retention of an F1 training use. So this application does not change the use of the site. The next site plan shows the location of the 2 buildings. You've got the small office building, and then the warehouse building is the larger building. Car parking to the north. A couple of slides of the office building. Next one shows the warehouse building. And then I've got a slide showing the outside storage racking. Just a few photographs. The access is existing. It's all in place. And as I said, it's got permission for hard standing and that's in place as well. This is looking towards the site. So the parking would be here in this corner. We can see my slide, my arrow. And then the buildings would be along this boundary. Just another view of the site. And lastly, this one shows the extent of the hard standing on that site. And I've just included this one because it shows the drainage that's actually in place already on the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have one speaker on this application, Hamish Buttle. Is that pronouncing? who is the agent for the applicant.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Hamish Buttle. I represent the applicant TBH Real Estate Investments Limited. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Planning Committee in respect of proposals for the erection of 2 B8 use class commercial buildings at the recently constructed Aylesford Open Storage Park. This now comprises 5 acres of concrete hard standing, along with associated suds, foul drainage, existing utility connections, including water and landscaping. The site was previously part of the Aylesford Quarry and has been subject to a number of planning permissions. The existing planning permission for the hard standing was granted in February 2024. The construction of hard standing to enable B8 use class open storage of vehicles, and the retention of the previously approved F1 training use. The site is operational, with plot 1 occupied by Easy Storage, and this application is for plot 4, which is the largest plot, comprising 2.5 acres. The proposed occupier is a company called Fraser, who are part of the Stark Group. The site will be operated as a storage and distribution hub for large, bulky materials for civils, infrastructure, and utilities related to construction projects. The business operates as trade only, and they only sell directly to the trade. The vast majority of products are distributed direct to contractors, as the products are often too large and bulky for most trade customers to collect. There will, however, be a limited number of customer collections per day, approximately 5 trade customer collections, which are often for smaller items that are required urgently on construction sites. Proposed development comprises an office and welfare building and a larger storage warehouse with external racking, dedicated staff car parking, and associated HGV and LGV drop-off and loading and a turning area. There are no foundations required for the buildings, as they will be placed directly onto the concrete hard standing. Vehicle movements will be minimal, as detailed in paragraph 6.25 of the officer's report, and considerably less than KCC Highways have accepted in respect of the pending application, as indicated at paragraph 6.28. KCC Highways and Transport have not objected to this application, or indeed any of the previous applications for this plot or the wider site. The proposal will generate circa 15 new full-time jobs and business rates, and the occupier is ready to commence the construction to enable the business to start operating. The proposal is considered to be wholly acceptable and in accordance with the new MPPF, the various components of the development plan, and supports economic, social, and environmental objectives. For the positive benefits this proposal can deliver, we respectfully request that members of the committee support the recommendation and approve this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
This has been called in by my colleague, Roger Dalton, who sadly can't be here tonight. I did have a conversation with him about it on Monday. There's a bit of history to this in that the Eccles used to be part of our ward until 2013, when the Boundary Commission took office. And since until 2024, we played no part in Eccles' life. However, we've now assumed responsibility. And that is the reason why we wanted to bring this into the public domain. That said, looking at this excellent report done by Ms. Field, that this is a very, very difficult case to answer, and I'm not really going to attempt to do so. The big problem we have on Bull Lane is that it is purely a rural road. And at one end of the rural road, you have a 12th century village, Aylesford, on which there's an HGV limitation of 7.5 tonnes. We very much hope that these heavy vehicles will not come through Aylesford. But regrettably, that is not for us to enforce. It is the police, and their standards of doing that are not very high. At the other end of Bull Lane, we've got Eccles, which is a village which was created long before the motor car. And now every house has 2 or 3 motor cars, and the parking is very much on Bull Lane. It is very challenging to get through it in a car. It must be very, very challenging in the sewage tankers, which use it regularly. and the traffic proposed in this thing. Now, critically, in this case, and it's brought out very, very well in the report, everything we'll be asked to approve tonight has been approved previously. It is only a slight variation of what is being done. And to that end, I cannot see any reason to oppose or reject this. I'm not keen on proposing or seconding the recommendation, but I cannot see any defence for this.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to add to this? Okay. Well, then I will propose that we accept the recommendation on paragraph 7 of the report, page 120, to approve the application subject to conditions and informatives as set out on the committee report. Can I have a seconded? Thank you, seconded. Councillor Pilgrim is seconded. But we should have a show of hands. Or against? So that's 12 for, 1 against. For YouTube watchers, that was granted with 12 votes for acceptance and 1 vote against. Thank you.
Chair, can I have that recorded that I voted against, please?
You may have it recorded, Councillor Dunlop. Moving on. Officers, if you've finished and you wish to depart, then okay. Bit of a faff. Okay. We'll just give the officer a moment to depart. Thank you. Okay, we have our final application for this evening. Cobblins Nursery, Trench Road, Tunbridge, and Mr. Morrissey, we are over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to Cobblins Nursery in Tunbridge. The application seeks outline from planning permission for the redevelopment of the site to provide up to 350 dwellings, of which 50% would be affordable, alongside associated works. The application is in outline form where all matters are reserved other than access. The application site comprises a former commercial and wholesale plant nursery business located to the west of Trench Road and adjacent to the settlement boundary of Tunbridge. The site is approximately 11.5 hectares in size, with the majority of the site being previously developed and occupied by a combination of former growing areas, polytunnels, hard standing, office and storage buildings, and other ancillary development and structures. A singular vehicle access from Trench Road serves the site, which also serves the adjacent property of Little Trench Farm, located to the west. The land level across the site slopes notably down towards the south, where a man-made water body pond is located, and a brook is also located along the south boundary. A public bridleway runs from the end of Trench Road in a general east-west direction, close to the northern boundary of the site. Ancient woodland and TPO trees are located along the northern boundary of the site, beyond there. And to the north of the site lies a primary school. To the south lies allotments and Longmead Community Primary School. To the north and east are existing residential properties and development. And Longmead Stadium and Tunbridge Farm Sports Ground are located to the south beyond Hilden Brook. A telecommunication mast is also located towards the northeast corner of the site. And here you can see the access from Trench Road. And here you can see an internal access road leading into the site. And here you can see the northern parcel towards existing built form and structures at the site. And here you can see the central parts of the site looking in the southwest direction. And here you can see the existing telecommunications mast and towards the boundary adjacent to Waveney Road. And here you can see the site looking towards the west. And here you can see the southwest parcel of the site. Here you can see looking back up the west boundary of the site, where that row of conifers forms the boundary between the application site and Little Trench Farm. Here you can see some of the existing buildings and structures present at the site. You can see one of the existing parking areas. And here you can see the site looking from Waveney Road. Finally, here you can see the site looking from the car park adjacent to Longmead Stadium and from within Tunbridge Farm Sports Ground. The application site is provisionally allocated within the Council's emerging local plan for residential development, forming part of site reference TO2 in the published Reg 18 plan, along with the adjacent French Farm, which is white hatching green. And the application seeks outline planning permission for the redevelopment of the site to provide up to 350 dwellings, of which 50% would be affordable. The application is in outline form where all matters are reserved other than access. Vehicular access to the site is proposed to be provided from two locations: the existing access off Trench Road in the north and a new secondary access from Waveney Road in the northeast. In addition, a footpath / cycle link is proposed to provide access to the community and sports facilities to the south of the site. An additional 20 parking spaces are proposed to be provided for use during pick-up and drop-off at the adjacent St Margaret's Primary School. And here you can see the proposed Trench Road access, which is to comprise a 6.2 metre wide carriageway with a 0.5 metre verge on the southern side, along with a 3 metre shared footway cycleway on the northern side of the carriageway. And here you can see the proposed new Waveney Road access, which is proposed to comprise a 5.5 metre wide carriageway with 2 metre wide verges on either side between the existing highway and the existing shared footway cycleway. A 3 metre wide shared footway cycleway is proposed on the western side of the carriageway, and a 2 metre wide footway is proposed on the eastern side of the carriageway, linking with the existing shared footway cycleways that exist there. As mentioned, a pedestrian cycle link is proposed to be provided, linking the south of the application site into Tunbridge Farm Sports Ground. And internally, the site circulation routes are indicatively shown to feed off the proposed access points and provide a clear, accessible route around the site, ensuring that all relevant types of vehicles can manoeuvre. A total of 564 spaces are shown to be provided, which is in accordance with KCC parking standards. The density of development at the site is approximately 31 dwellings per hectare and a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, 2, 3, 4 and 5 bed houses, and an independent living block providing further 1 and 2 bedroom apartments is shown, ranging from 2 to 3 stories in height. The application is supported by a series of parameter plans which provide a clear framework from which more detailed design proposals can be generated at the reserve matter stage. The submitted parameter plans include building extents, land use, access and movement, principal public realm areas and dwelling types. And these parameter plans are listed within the approved plans condition. In addition to the submitted parameter plans, a design code is being prepared and submitted in support of the application. The code provides a design, vision and development framework for the application site that any future reserve matters applications would be required to come forward in compliance with. The design code and development incorporates character areas to help reinforce the identity of the smaller communities within the development and give them a unique feel. The above 5 character areas are proposed, and these are discussed in detail within the committee report. The design code has been conditioned to ensure that individual reserve matter applications follow design principles to ensure what is delivered at the site is of high quality. And here you can see an indicative landscape plan. As highlighted earlier in the evening, a new MPPF has been published and these changes have been set out within the supplementary document. In addition, 2 further neutral comments have been received from local residents since the agenda was published, and the points raised have largely already been addressed within the committee report. Regarding other updates, an additional head of term is proposed to be included in the Section 106 to secure local employment and training obligations and local supply chain commitments. So in summary, the proposal would deliver up to 350 dwellings, including 50% at the council, 50% affordable housing at the council's preferred tenure split, the provision of 20 parking spaces to support drop-off and pick-up provisions at the adjacent primary school, enhanced pedestrian and cycle connectivity, along with improved pedestrian and cycle access to Tunbridge Farm Sports Ground, along with financial contributions towards healthcare provisions, education provisions, children's services, bus taster tickets for future occupiers, libraries, social care, waste services, green space and play provisions, and indoor and outdoor sports provisions. The recommendation remains unchanged, subject to the additional heads of terms to be included in the Section 106, along with updates to the conditions where paragraphs from the 2024 MPPF have been referenced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. We have one speaker on this application, which is Louise Leyland, who's the agent for the applicant.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. As you've heard, the site is largely previously developed land in a highly sustainable location. The site firmly falls within the definition of grey belt and meets all of the golden rules. Throughout this process, we've worked with your planning officers to ensure that the application is appropriate for the local area and will add value for new and existing residents. The development will deliver up to 350 new homes, 175 of which will be affordable, directly addressing the urgent need for housing and specifically affordable housing in the area. In terms of additional benefits, the site will provide 20 dedicated and much needed car parking spaces for the adjacent primary school, allowing for a safe, convenient drop-off and pick-up point. A new green link will run the length of the site, providing an attractive walking and cycling route for both new and existing residents of Trench Ward, providing a safe and convenient route to the facilities at Tunbridge Farm Sports Ground, with the full support of Tunbridge Angels Football Club. Significant financial contributions to be delivered include £425,000 to improve healthcare facilities near the site, over £1 million to Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells NHS Trust, contributions towards education, community skills, children's services, adult social care, and a range of sports and open space facilities, including around £167,000 towards the new leisure centre in Tunbridge. The development of the site will provide jobs and revenue for local contractors and businesses. The Home Builders Federation estimates that building 350 homes supports the employment of over 1,200 people. There are no objections from any statutory consultees. The scheme has been assessed by the council-appointed highways consultant, who agrees that the development would not result in severe highways impacts, whilst the secondary access onto Waveney Road will improve permeability for new and existing residents. Regarding water supply, technical information in line with the council's requirements has been submitted to demonstrate that all dwellings are capable of receiving a safe and reliable supply. We've also agreed to a condition limiting water use to 90 litres per person per day, which is lower than the 110 litre requirement. The proposals are landscape-led, taking account of the edge of settlement location and existing green infrastructure. The scheme is set to provide significant ecological enhancements, including a BNG uplift of 128% in habitat units, and will protect the adjacent ancient woodland. A master plan has been developed for the site and is a design code submitted to ensure that the eventual build-out of the scheme will be of a high standard and in line with the outline details. The scheme will result in numerous benefits for the local area, reusing brownfield land in a highly sustainable location on the edge of Tunbridge. The proposals will deliver a significant amount of housing and specifically affordable housing for the borough, helping to address this current shortfall. The scheme is in line with your development plan as a whole and national planning policy, which seeks a substantial increase in the supply of new homes. I therefore urge members to support this sustainable development and the benefits it will bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anybody who would like to speak on this application? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. As a local member, thank you. We've heard some good reasons why this is a good site. It's a brownfield site, and it's surrounded by trees, which effectively hides its state. But there are many reasons why I've had literally hundreds of emails from residents about this and why they oppose it. And it is obviously to do with water, it is to do with traffic, and it is to do with the infrastructure. Now, annoyingly and very frustratingly, Kent Highways have not objected to any of this. But anyone who's local would know that certain times of the day, especially in the morning, that the traffic in Tunbridge High Street tails back past Trench Road and sometimes goes on to Bishop's Oak Ride, which is a huge backlog of traffic. And if we have 525 homes there, we're using the 1.5 cars per home or vehicles per home. That's sorry, the 320 or 350. They could actually add up to 525 extra vehicles, which could, in effect, at any one time, any one day, once it's complete and including deliveries, you could have something in the region of, I'm being kind here, 750 vehicle movements on and off the estate. And Trench Road, Waveney Road and Darrenth Avenue could not cope with that amount of traffic going on and off. And the residents are, in my opinion, have very good reason to get to this. They're very serious concerns, and I do agree with them, to be fair, because I know the area very well. I've stood on the corner by Greenfrith Drive with the local police and watched the parking at school time, with buses having trouble getting around the corners because the traffic's all over the place. So it's not a good development as far as that's concerned, and as far as the local people are concerned. With certain comments we've heard just now, we sent some questions to James earlier today. I know he's received. I know he has all the answers to. And if you wish, do you wish me to go at the one by one, or just mention this? I'll mention my ones. I know that my board colleague is basically sitting at home waiting with bated breath, looking after his new baby. Question which we put to James this morning. Please, can you explain what affordable housing means and how it can be how we can ensure these homes are allocated to our residents in Trench and North Tunbridge first? Our next question was the public footpath to Tunbridge Farm from the development is critically important to reduce traffic and encourage access to open space. Can we be confident that this is appropriately secured by the recommended conditions and will be delivered before the development is occupied? My last question here, which I've questioned already, what will be the impact of already congested roads from this additional traffic? We note that KCC already admit that the Ridgeway Junction is already over capacity. How will this be mitigated? And what does condition 39 mean in practice in terms of tangible highway improvements?
James, do you want to come back on those, or do you want to hear what Adam's got first?
I'm happy to come back on those points, and whilst they're sort of fresh in everyone's mind, and I'll defer to your last question to Melissa on the highways points. But as a sort of starting point, I acknowledge your concerns around highways and parking. To answer your parking, the development is providing parking spaces in line with KCC parking requirements. In terms of movements to and from the site, I think it's important to remember that this is a lawful commercial site. So whilst the plant nursery that was at the site ceased in December, it could lawfully be a commercial site tomorrow with vehicle movements associated with that using the same road network. In terms of affordable housing, so in planning terms, affordable housing means housing for sale or rent provided for people whose needs are not met by the open market, in simple terms. So as part of the Section 106 to be tied to this, should members recommend approval on this application, a local lettings plan will be required, which will ultimately prioritise households with a local connection to the local area. So those local residents in Trench Ward and the adjacent wards would have first bite of the cherry. Should that not sort of fill all 50%, so up to 175 affordable units, it would then go to residents on the TNBC housing register. So you might not end up with hundreds of residents, but residents from within the borough who have a local connection. In terms of the public footpath, I think it's a real benefit of the scheme that it is beneficial to. So at the moment, this is obviously a private site that no member of the public can access. Opening up this site and providing that link isn't only a benefit for future residents of the site, being able to utilise the fantastic facilities available at Tunbridge Farm Sports Grounds, as well as attend, should they wish, the local football clubs games. It's also a benefit to those residents to the north of the site in terms of their connectivity and ability to ease of access of those provisions. So, but condition 4 of the sets out the phasing requirements. So an application would be required to set out the phasing of the development, and as part of that, we would ultimately be looking to seek the delivery of this footpath at the earliest possible opportunity. We also have condition 9, which requires the details, the specific details layout of that routeway and link. I'd like to defer to Melissa, if that's okay, for your highway question.
Melissa Vento, Associate Transport Planner at Project Centre, providing independent highway comments on top of what KCC Highways has already provided. Definitely hear the concerns about the traffic congestion that's already on the network, and we can see that from our assessment. With the condition 39, it's a baseline to put in a monitoring mechanism that the developer will need to adhere by. So there is no, it's not a baseline to say this is what they need to do to address the congestion problems that are going on at the moment, but it's a mechanism that they need to put in place to say from day one before occupation, we are going to put in a monitoring mechanism to understand when our development is active, what are the impacts of this, because the baseline assessment that they've done as part of the transport assessment shows that the future baseline, i.e. the congestion now and the congestion without the development, as you say, it's already congested. There's a lot of network congestion going at certain points, especially the roundabout to the south. So the condition 39 is for the developer to put in a mechanism in place. So then what trigger points can be assessed at what sites, and then with the council, work with them to understand if these trigger points are gone over when the development is in place, then what mitigation measures would be studied or decided going forward. So the condition 39 is not about deciding now what to put in place to mitigate what's going on now and decide what might happen in the future. It's a mechanism, a trigger mechanism put in place to understand what can happen in the future, what does happen in the future through monitoring, and then to decide the mitigation that is appropriate. And that could be, for example, it depends on like different approaches. I know there's a crossing there's a specific road, the Ridgeway, A26, there is a crossing there, whether the pedestrian crossing is causing a problem, whether there needs to be signalisation at the A26 Ridgeway roundabout. There's many different things that could be done, might not be appropriate, but it's not for this point in time to decide what mitigation that is. But there is an understanding that there is, at the future baseline, there is congestion, but the development and the assessment that they've done shows that actually the development coming forward doesn't tip over those junctions to a severe impact according to the NPPF. And that's what our assessment is.
Thank you. Would you like to come back at all, Councillor Tunstall?
Thank you. Just that last comment actually just appears to me it's like after the horse has bolted that this will be done. But thanks for your point.
Councillor Mehmet.
Thank you, Chair. I am obviously supposed to be on paternity leave following the birth of my son on Monday morning, but this application is very important to our residents and probably the most significant development in North Tunbridge for quite a few decades. Firstly, I did want to say thank you to James Moisey for his hard work on this application. He's done a very detailed committee report, which I've been through. And I think the case is probably not clear cut, as Keith has said. There are some positive aspects. 50% affordable housing is good, but we do have to make sure that it goes to our residents in Tunbridge first. General housing, it will increase choice and availability, and we do hear from our residents that their families and friends priced out of the area, moving to places like Paddock Wood due to the cost of housing in Tunbridge. So that will have some benefit, which I think is a good thing. The footpath into Longmead Recreation Ground, definitely a positive. It will reduce car movements because people will be able to walk there, and it provides a route sort of down into town from there as well. It is a developed site already, and it is quite well screened from surrounding area, and I would certainly rather see something happen here than in the countryside that surrounds our ward. In terms of negative aspects, so I think traffic will inevitably increase. I'm not particularly convinced by the solution in terms of the Ridgeway, because I think the problem there is that there isn't necessarily highways mitigation that can be delivered. It's a very tight junction and there isn't really the space for it. So I have some strong reservations about that. I am very concerned about water supply, given the recent shortages we've had. And in fact, I have personal experience of this. Myself, Keith, Matt and Dennis have actually spent our last 2 weekends in a row getting water to our residents in North Tunbridge following the burst water mains. And I can't see any other way other than this is going to potentially make that worse by increasing demand. However, reviewing the papers, neither Kent County Council, Highways or South East Water have actually provided any objection. So it puts us in a very difficult position because if they're not going to support us on these critical issues, I think the committee is going to struggle to justify a refusal. And I do get frustrated by their unwillingness to stand up for residents on these issues. Reluctantly, though, I just can't see how we would have any realistic prospect of success if they're not going to support us. So it does make it a very challenging decision. What else has happened? So this week we've obviously seen the government make further changes to the planning system, and it's going to make it almost impossible, I think, for local councillors to have any meaningful say in planning applications like this. And I think in this context, I'm as much concerned about the negative effects of development, but I'm equally worried about wasting our taxpayers' money on a planning appeal that would ultimately not go anywhere and incurring significant legal costs. So that's, I think, something that should be in the mind of the committee. I do have some questions, building on some of the things that Councillor Tunstall has said. And I just wondered maybe whether officers could provide any reassurances on the water aspect, particularly given these outages that have happened recently. And something I suppose is in my mind is that there is a horticultural use at the nursery at the moment, so presumably they would require quite a lot of water. So perhaps officers can explain to us whether there's much of a difference, I suppose, between the housing development and the sort of the current uses on the site. I would like to know a bit more about how the development might benefit our local businesses and shops, if there's any guidance that officers can provide on that. And I think the key question that residents are going to want to know is what infrastructure upgrades are going to be provided and when. And particularly that will involve, doctor surgery capacity, schools in the area. So I'd like some guidance on that. Finally, if the committee is minded to approve this application, I would like our residents in Trench to see some benefit from it. And we strongly feel that it should centre on delivering economic and social benefits to our residents, and it would go some way towards mitigating the effects of it. So if the committee is minded to approve it, I would like to suggest, and I can't advance this myself, but perhaps Councillor Tunstall would, I'd like to suggest they add an additional condition. And the wording of that would say that no development shall start until a local labour plan has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The plan shall set out details of how the applicant will use best endeavours to deliver new jobs and apprenticeships for residents of Trench Ward during the construction and operational phases of the development. It should include details of total new jobs created during construction and operational phases, including short-term construction jobs and longer-term, for example, landscaping management, cleaning or servicing jobs, details of any jobs, apprenticeship schemes and or training opportunities for local residents of Trench Ward, and details of any social value work with local schools, colleges and community organisations based in Trenchward. And the development shall be carried out in accordance with the approved details. And the reason being for that would be to support sustainable development through economic and social growth in the area in accordance with paragraph 17 of the NPPF 2026. So thank you for hearing me out, and I hope the committee will carefully consider these matters, and at the very least, in the event it's minded to support the application, then it would do so with the addition of that condition that I've just read out, which will achieve some good for our residents in Trench who will have to live with the effects of this scheme. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I have a couple of speakers. Councillor Hood first.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got quite a few questions about this. So I'd like to ask a question with regard to solar panels. There aren't any solar panels on this scheme at all. Is there going to be any mechanism where the people who are going to be purchasing these properties, including the registered social housing provider, are going to be able to ask for solar panels to be put on there at some kind of at the beginning, not to be retrofit? That's what I'm getting to. Is the development going to be gas free? I know it's got a materials first kind of policy on it. Regarding affordable housing, we all want to see local people benefit from these. Do we know anything about the future tenures of the social housing here, of the affordable housing here rather, because we know that social housing is the key issue for many of our residents and what our residents need most. I'm going to stop there, and then I've got some more questions, if that's okay with you.
Okay, Mr. Mersey, are you happy?
Yep, thank you. If I just come back, I'm going to just go respond to a couple of Adam's points, if that's okay, and then I'll yours, Councillor Hood. So I think Adam, on the first, in reverse order, on the sort of requested condition, I think that could be adequately covered within the additional heads of term within the legal agreement. But, you know, open to members if they would wish to add that as a condition, then so be it. In terms of, you know, infrastructure benefits when they will be on site or delivered, I think, you know, there's two sides to infrastructure. There's the physical. So here you're looking at new access from Waveney Road and what benefits that could bring, the pedestrian cycle linkages, and the parking for the primary school. I'd say the main sort of physical infrastructure benefits to the site, and those would all come forward inevitably as the scheme is delivered in its respective phases. In terms of sort of social infrastructure, the scheme would deliver on-site play provisions, open areas of open space. The site would also become publicly accessible, which it presently isn't. But in addition, there would also be the nominal contributions towards healthcare, education, libraries, etc. And we would be looking to secure those as early as possible when negotiating the Section 106 agreement. And I think there's some quite hefty contributions being secured under this application. Regarding the water, we've obviously attached the gramping condition that members are all well rehearsed on. And I'd also just remind members, obviously this site had a former commercial plant nursery use. So whilst there is a water body on site, they would have primarily relied on, or to a large extent relied on, mains water supply to operate the business, particularly in times like we're in now where there's a drought. Coming to Councillor Hood's queries and questions. So the application is in outline form. So the layout and final mix, a number of units is not approved by application. That will be determined at the reserve matter stage. However, condition 35 requires details of renewable energy technologies and water conservation. So any that condition will be required to be discharged. I don't know the answer in terms of gas free. I think that will be again something that we will find out as the scheme develops and we receive future reserve matters applications. And in terms of tenure split, we're obviously securing 50% affordable housing, so that's up to 175 units at the site at the council's preferred tenure split. So that is a split of 70% rented and 30% intermediate affordable home ownership. And now those would be finalised at the reserve matter stage, but that would be something that forms part of the 106.
Thank you. Councillor Hood, do you wish to come?
Yes, I've got some comments about the response of Kent County Council's Highways Department. no one is surprised by the lack of an objection here. Myself being a KCC member for this division, me least. The fact of the matter is that we also have highways comments here that have been commissioned by our own council, which are an appendix to this report. And I have to say, I am really disappointed because I thought the idea of spending this money was that we would get a more accurate picture of what's going on. And I am not seeing that. That is not reflected in these papers at all. So we've got a situation where we've had talk about Yardley Park Road and the Ridgeway and mitigation there. And I must say, I'm most confused by the references to Brook Street, the Brook Street Junction, and that we're going to be monitoring post opening of this development. We're going to be monitoring a roundabout at the opposite end of the town in my ward. How does that work? We've got a series of junctions in between, which are close to capacity. Brook Street's already at capacity. The roundabout at St Stephen's already at capacity. You've got the junction at the George and Dragon. You've mentioned the junction. Actually, we haven't mentioned the junction at the Pinnacles, have we? Where the secondary exit actually leads to. The two A20 and A26 junctions, there can be no mitigation there. So let's put this to bed. I would like to know what the mitigation for this development can possibly be, because there can be no mitigation at the Ridgeway Junction or the Yardley Park Junction with Hadlow Road, because I've asked for that. We've had investigations several times at the request of residents. So what we've got here is we've got a report which expects us to swallow monitoring after the development's been opened, and we've already got all these extra cars are running, but no, there is no mitigation. So let's not pretend there is mitigation. This is a fantasy. We've got this business about the on page, was it on condition 26, I think it is, relates to wastewater, foul water drainage. Can we not? Is this as strongly worded as it can possibly be? Is this as strongly worded as the Wildon condition is that's used by Wildon District Council? Because if it isn't, it certainly should be. I can see other members shaking their head. These conditions need to be as strong as they can possibly be, because this development is on the opposite side of Tunbridge to the wastewater treatment works, and this is raising huge alarms for me. When we looked at the Tunbridge Historical Society wanted to be here today, and I just need to pass on their apologies that their speaker couldn't be here, and they're mindful that condition 25 about archaeology is definitely going to be in there. But yeah, if you could pick up on all the points that I've raised there, because this is a real concern. I don't see where the additional mitigation for highways can possibly be achieved.
I'll just come back on the highways point. The development is showing that the number of vehicles that is going to be added to the network at various junctions coming from Trench Road out of the site, going down to the A26, is a small amount that is going to be added onto the existing network that is already at a future baseline, which is already not over capacity, but is near to capacity. So when you're doing an assessment, and because we're showing that actually this development coming forward is not going to push over the congestion in the area, it's already at an area. It's already an area with certain areas that are already at a congestion point. Condition 39 is, I mentioned the A26 Brook Street, but I'm not discounting all the other sites that are closer to the site development along Trench Road and off Waverley Road. There are other junctions. That was just an example. The developer needs to put in a place, so that condition 39, they will have to look at all the junctions in the immediate area and put in a mechanism of what needs to be monitored for when they think, or when the assessment shows that the junctions are going over as a result of their development, then a mitigation strategy will be put in place. Condition 39 is not to allocate or put out what traffic mitigation should go in now as a result of development coming forward. And that assessment will be done as a result of condition 39. I just wanted to add on to that the number of traffic, just from their transport assessment, in the AM peak, there's about 154 two-way vehicle trips as a result of the development, and then the PM peak, 138 two-way trips. Around 70% is using Trench Road, and then a quarter, like 30% or less, will be using Waveney Road. It also shows that, I know James has mentioned earlier in the evening, that there's a number of obviously active travel and sustainable travel measures, got the bus, public transport contributions as well. So the site is trying to be as sustainable and as active as possible, bringing forward to help reduce vehicle traffic on the road. So that's one of my points.
I can come back in on your comments around Southern Water. So we consulted Southern Water on the application. They are infrastructure provider here in Tunbridge and Moorland. The condition that you referenced, 26, is a condition that Southern Water requested. I think that's word for word as they requested it. I'd also refer to you. So that's a pre-commencement condition. So no works can take place on the site until that condition has been discharged, and that would be when a discharge of condition application be submitted. We would consult Southern Water again on that for their input, and we have included informative 8, which reiterates that it's the applicant's responsibility to ensure that they've got all of the relevant Southern Water consents before carrying out any works. I can't comment on the Wealden condition. I don't know what it is. I don't even know who deals with their water.
Thank you. I'll come back to you in a minute, Councillor Hood, because I have a number of other speakers. I will come back to you there. Councillor King, would you like to enlighten us on the Wealden?
Well, yeah, I can enlighten you on what it is and some of the objectives, but I think James and I both agree we're still looking at the detail. But I do find it quite interesting because, picking up on Southern Water, the first thing they say is no objection, which is almost what every consultee says in this current world that we live in. Then they go on to detail why they ought to be objecting, because they talk about the fact that they have their own question marks over the capacity of the Tunbridge wastewater treatment plant. And trust me, Councillor Mehmet and I have been trying to get answers to that question from Southern Water directly about what the status is of that water plant, and they have chosen not to reply on that one, but they've raised the questions themselves here, plus the network that supplies it or services the surrounding area. And then they go on to say that, and it's vague language, they say some capacity issues may need to be addressed with the operational changes. I love jargon like that, don't you? Others may require physical work on our assets. I mean, that's pretty standard stuff, isn't it? We may identify where several developments would benefit from a large network reinforcement programme to serve them all where significant growth is taking place in close proximity. I mean, that's generality. But the condition 36 says construction of the development shall not commence until details of the proposed means of foul water drainage disposal respecting the requirement of a non-habitable zone around the adoptable pumping station and suitable access arrangements have been submitted. I'm not sure I understand what that means, but it sounds really good. And approved in writing by the local planning authority in consultation. It's good intentions, I personally agree with Councillor Hood. It's just not tough enough. I do believe that we do need something like the Grampian condition, which specifically says that the capacity should be guaranteed by the undertaker to our satisfaction before the work commences, rather than someone just saying, well, we got no problem, but we know there's going to be a load of problems down the road and we don't know what they are yet, and we might do something about them and we'll have a chat about it at the appropriate time. So the Wealden Grampian or the Wealden framework sets about specifying in some detail what the questions are that would be asked for a particular facility of the undertaker, either by us or by the applicant, the developer, in order to ascertain that the supply will be guaranteed and available. In this case, the service will be available to take the goods in question away from the sites. So I do find the language vague and optimistic, and that's where I think that we ought to be looking to. Well, I know that we need to be looking to tighten up on this, but James has got to allocate the time to look at see how the Grampian conditions might be applied. But this is one such example where it must be, or something similar must be applied, and we need to be a bit tighter, or a lot tighter, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pilgrim, you're next on my list.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to be a pain. James, could you bring up a Google Street View on Trench Road by any chance? And just, I think Keith and Adam described the traffic problems around Trench Road, but I think for other members that don't know the area, I think it'd be quite wise for them to see exactly what Trench Road looks like. Having lived around Trench all my life and spent an awful lot of time up and down Trench Road, Greenfifth Drive, St Margaret's when I went to school there. Over the years, it's just got worse and worse and worse and worse. Now, Trench Road from the Shibham Road end all the way up to St Margaret's has become, I would say, shockingly poor for traffic, not just school times, but any time of the day. Right, okay, so that's it. So this is Trench Road going down from the school behind. That's Northwood Road. Again, all these roads are double parked either side of the road. So if you head down Trench Road, awfully handy for the bus stop. If you can spin around, sorry, James. That's it, head down that way. Now, this is obviously a bus route. A lot of driveways, parking on pavement parking, on grass verges. Obviously, you can see where they've had to put in wooden poles to prevent it. I don't quite know when that was taken, but I can guarantee you, if you go up Trench Road now, as you go further down, you come to the 6-in-1 club on the right-hand side and a little shop. It's just horrendous, and it's to the stage where buses, or a bus, really struggles to turn in and out of Northwood Road, Trench Road, Greenfifth Drive. On page 127, 1.8, it says that approval from KCC's about removing 4 or 5 on-street car parking spaces located at the northern side of Trench Road, and double yellow lines proposed. Now, what's going to happen with them 4 or 5 car parking spaces when they've been removed is that I believe it says that they're going to be relocated within the development somewhere. I think that's going to be the case regardless. The 20 spaces reserved for St Margaret's will just be an overspill for residents of the new development and or current residents of around Trench Road, because they've all got more than one car. Cycle access, pedestrian access from the site through to Tunbridge Farm and beyond is great. But once you get to Tunbridge Farm, if you cycle and you want to go across to Hildon Borough, then across the fields or out to Lye, there is no footpath that you can take. You have to cross a field and then you have to pick up on a footpath on the cricket pitch to get across onto the London Road, then to make your way. I would really like to see a continuation of a footpath that you can actually walk along, ride along, push a wheelchair along, mobility scooter, anything to sort of get further out so you can actually enjoy what is actually on offer. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you wish to come back, Mr.
Please. Thank you. Sort of again, if I try and look back in reverse order, so there's quite a bit there, Stacey, but I appreciate your, the pedestrian cycle link here across the site. I think is a wider benefit in that it allows a greater accessibility to Tunbridge Farm Sports Ground. And once you get to Tunbridge Sports Ground, you're right, you can go across the sort of Longmead sports pitches provisions, and then you'll get to the northern boundary of Tunbridge Cricket Club, and then there's a strip at northern boundary of the Tunbridge Cricket Club, which is grass, before you get to the hard surface cycle path, which leads to London Road. Now, we ultimately have to assess this application in front of us on its merits, what's in front of us, but that strip of lands that you're referencing is States lands. So the council have that land, and that's probably something for a wider discussion as to whether it would be suitable to put in a hard surfaced footway there. In terms of the removal of the parking along Trench Road, so that would require consent of KCC, and KCC also have, as the Highway Authority, have the ability, should they deem it appropriate to put yellow lines down roads for, where there are highway safety issues or concerns along that sort of thing. So there's the potential loss of 4 to 5 spaces along Trench Road. The application delivers 20 parking spaces, which would be available for sort of parking and drop-off provisions, and they would be managed under, there's a car park management plan condition. But in addition to the parking spaces, I fully recognise, parking pressures around primary schools at those peak times. You're adding what is a private site at the moment that's not publicly accessible, and you're putting a housing estate in it, and you're creating all that additional curb space. Now, as someone who does drop off, if I can't park outside where I'm dropping off, I will carry on going. I won't try and do a 3-point turn at the entrance. So that logically here would take you into this estate. So then you go, you're trying to go to those parking spaces for whatever reason not available. You're looking for probably curb space within this development site, rather than doing a full turnaround and going back up Trench Road in the hope that a space you've already passed is still available at that time when everyone's doing drop off and pick up. In terms of, I think have I answered all your points there, or is there anything that I missed anything? Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Tatton.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to come back to the point that Councillor Hood was making about the highways mitigation, because I'm still not very clear about what that could entail. I mean, Councillor Hood says nothing's possible, but what could be? Do we have some idea? Are highways telling us what would be possible? Is our consultant telling us what might be possible, or is it literally we've got no clue? That hasn't really been talked about. That will be something for down the line. And in that sense, is it just sort of an open book? What could the developer have to provide? Is it just unending, depending on what that monitoring shows? So that's my first question. And also about the buses, because I think that traffic is always an issue for us with these things. And therefore the buses need to work, and there is a bus, and I think it runs roughly every half an hour. Seems reasonable. And unlike an application we were talking about recently, it looks as if it might take people where they want to go. But you have to make that attractive, and I haven't seen anything about bus shelters. It's quite a simple point, really, but actually quite an important point, that if you provide a bus shelter, they might be more inclined to go and stand and wait for the bus. If there's no bus shelter and it's pouring with rain, or it's boiling hot, or it's blowing a gale, people aren't going to go and stand and, use the bus if they can take their car somewhere. Or certainly some of their journeys. So I just wonder whether there is an opportunity for bus shelters, if that hasn't been looked at, included. Is that covered somewhere that I haven't read? I think that is probably. Oh, and just to say that I support very much the proposed condition that Adam mentioned. I think particularly with Trench being a deprived ward, I think that would be excellent to have that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor online.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm not a member of your committee. A couple of points I wanted to raise. The first is that this is the second major application where Tunbridge and Malling have got our own highway consultant because we weren't happy about the KCC highway consultant. And we've ended up with a worse report than we would have got from KCC. And I'm wondering how we brief these consultants. The second point was raised by Councillors Hood and King about gramping condition on sewage. And if I was sitting in that chamber, I would propose that we impose a gramping condition on this application and let the officers and the lawyers argue about it afterwards. Use this as a test case, because the gramping condition on sewage, following the Wealden framework, is a wonderful idea, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come back to on any of those?
Could we come back on that's the Councillor Tatton's? I'll defer to Melissa on the highway points.
On the highways points, going back again, I'll just read out because the question came in, I think, later on this afternoon about Condition 39. And my point was that parts of the network are already over capacity. The evidence that's been presented indicates that the development does not materially worsen this to a severe degree, according to the NPPF. Now, Condition 39 is not to deliver specific junction improvements at certain areas at this point in time, but it's a safeguarding mechanism to require monitoring to further mitigate if those junctions exceed capacity as a result of the development. So to answer your question, there is no specific highway improvements that we have recommended at this stage to the developer. But the mechanism of Condition 39 is to make sure the developer are accountable for the assessment which takes place after the site opens. If their development is pushing it over, which it isn't predicted to from their assessments, then a mechanism will need to come forward where a study is taking place about what mitigation should take place. KCC highways haven't also provided any specific highway measures for certain junctions or in the area. But at this point in time, there are options to explore. I understand that you said there are certain options at specific junctions that there isn't nothing we can do. I'm not party or aware of previous studies that have gone on, but this condition does put the onus on the developer to do those assessments, to do those investigations, and come up with mitigation measures that are appropriate for the council and are acceptable by KCC highways.
Thank you. I'll just add, Councillor Tatton, that this site, it's important not to lose sight here that this site is adjacent to the settlement boundary and confines of Tunbridge, which is identified in the council's sustainable settlement study assessment. I can't remember the specific name, as the most sustainable settlement in the borough. We are approximately a 10-12 minute cycle from Tunbridge station all the way in the south of Tunbridge here, and there is quite a bit in the way of local services in this part. There's a local shopping parade. I think it does include like North Tunbridge Library or a facility like that. It's got 2 primary schools that are adjacent to it and allotments, several churches, a community centre, and it's not too far off secondary school. So I think it's important to lose sight that this is a sustainable location for development. The heads of terms in 106 also seeks to secure a bus taster ticket. I take your point on about bus shelters, and this application doesn't secure or deliver a shelter for a bus service, but it does provide £200 per dwelling towards bus taster tickets for each householder to cover the period of 1 month. I hope that answers some greater clarity.
Can I just add some more things on transport? The census data would indicate that even though you're probably expecting X amount of vehicles coming from the development, with all this sustainable travel, the active travel links, it's likely not all car parking will be used for every single unit at that site. It's not expected everybody is going to use a car based on how sustainable the area is and the routes that are being provided as part of being secured through Section 278 works and the public transport provision as well. So it is, then again, just highlighting the sustainability of the site. I don't expect every single unit to be using the maximum amount of car parking that they are allocated, essentially.
Thank you. I'm going to Councillor Hood again and then Councillor King.
Thank you very much. There seems to be a lot of conflict within this traffic document. We've heard that there's going to be an ambition for a 5% reduction in single occupancy car trips over 5 years, but we've also established that there are no whole route active travel routes that can get people into Tunbridge Town Centre currently. So that finding a solution to that missing link through Tunbridge Farm should be a real priority. What really concerns me here is we have piecemeal planning. We've got different planning applications come to this committee, and we know that we've got a serious problem. There is a potential solution to all of this, and that is the gyratory roundabout at the Star and Garter. But instead, we have all of these applications turn up, and we are unable to elicit any funding or commitment to funding for that kind of work, which would be transformative. So in this transport plan, it says, whilst the proposed overall number of spaces, car parking spaces, are in accordance with parking standards, it would be beneficial to the wider scheme in relation to sustainable travel and in relation to reducing the impact of traffic on local roads, that a reduction in parking should be considered. I know that officers have heard comments from members earlier about our desire to maximise. I'm a Green councillor, and the idea of supporting car parking spaces kind of runs contrary to my political instincts. But I'm a realist, and we need to make sure that this development has has got the requisite number of car parking spaces. We can't have a traffic report which flies in the face of what the council's desire is. So I just don't get it. I just don't understand how this has been put together. The bus stop, Brecon Walk, I think it would be a perfect location. If we could put a shelter at Brecon Walk, I think that would be really helpful to this development.
Is that okay, Councillor Hood? Yeah. Councillor King.
Thank you. I just like to come back to the Grampian condition. It actually is quite straightforward, in my opinion. For a given development of a certain type, using standard metrics per person per day, a certain volume of water is required by the undertaker, in this case South East Water, and we look for them to give assurances which in detail to say that they are capable of sustaining that supply on an ongoing basis. Right, so for Southern Water, and I just think condition 36 doesn't do this, it is almost the reverse. For a given development of a certain type, there are metrics which says the amount of waste that would be produced by that development that will be fed into the local network should it be adequate. And that requires the undertaker, in this case Southern Water, to be able to receive, process and dispose of that waste. And I think we need similar undertakings whereby for that development to go ahead, they need to say, to get away from all of this stuff that they might do this, they may do that. Yes, our network is or will be, given certain actions, be adequate to deal with this particular development. I mean, I think that's all it needs to say, and it mirrors the Grampian conditions in that regard. And I don't think the current condition does that. It's a bit too airy-fairy for me anyway. And that's not taking away from the massive job you've done elsewhere, James. Thank you.
Councillor, I saw you indicate Councillor Hook and Mr. Bailey. Please come back first.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, Dennis, on that point. And obviously that was tabled at a discussion. I wasn't there at H&P in terms of further work, but I think it's just that at the moment. There is further work that needs to be looked at. We need to do some investigations. We need to look at whether we need to adopt it as a material planning consideration, what effectively areas we're going to look at, what stipulations we're going to require. We need to work in consultation with Southern Water. So there's quite a bit of body of work that needs to be done to get to the position of effectively the Wilden proposition at the moment. And I think James has alluded to condition 26 is a condition that's been recommended by Southern Water at the current time. So I think without that further work being done, which, as I said, is on the planned timetable, it is going to be looked at to go forward. I think it's premature to go down that further detail at this stage, because this is what Southern Water have recommended. And let's not forget, this condition stops any development. It's similar to the water issue in terms of potable water supply, where in effect it says you can't commence development until there is sufficient supply on that basis. So I think these are Grampian style conditions. They're the conditions that developers really don't like, because it stops any development coming forward until you discharge that condition. So it is a block on development. And I think at this stage, I understand and hear what you're saying, but I think what I'm saying is there's further work, there's further information that we need to have in order to make that a lot more robust, which we are going to be looking at moving forward. But I think at this stage, it's just a bit early because we don't have that backing information from Southern Water.
Thank you, James. I accept all of that. And I didn't, as you noticed, didn't say you should have a Wilden condition. I tried to keep it in plain English. I tried to say what I felt were the situation was based on the comments made by Southern Water themselves. So basically, in order to address that, they have themselves said, you've got a few problems here, which we can't actually say that we're going to be able to deal with. And all I'm saying is the condition doesn't actually address that in the way that I think it should be in plain English, with the clear boundaries, such that that we can actually be confident that they will actually be able to deal with the impacts of this development. And hopefully there will be. But as I say, they're very, very cagey organisation. They don't actually say what that water processing works is capable of. And what they actually say is, well, there might be a few problems, and the network, well, yeah, it might need scaling somewhat. And yes, locally, there may be some work required. Well, firm up on it, give us the details, and yeah, go ahead and do the development. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else would like to speak? Oh, Councillor Hood, wish to come back
Yeah,
again.
okay. I've got the wording of the Grampian condition used at Wilden. I don't see why we can't use that. Which is no development. This would be to replace condition 26. No development approved by this permission shall be commenced until full details of the proposed means of foul drainage disposal have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The scheme shall be implemented as approved, and no dwelling served by the development shall be occupied until the necessary foul drainage and network infrastructure works have been completed and are operational. And that the reason is to secure a satisfactory standard of development and to prevent sewage pollution of the local environment. I've got a question. Was a environmental impact assessment carried out for this site? Because my understanding, if that is the case, then cumulative effect of traffic impact is a material planning matter. And from what I've seen, there is no mitigation for it. If you already know you've got junctions at capacity, how can you give further approvals?
Okay, James, do you want to come back on that, or?
Yeah, it was subject to an environmental statement on highways, and that's been considered as part of the application and ultimately sort of fed into the report. On the sort of Grampian condition request, we have to assess this application on its own merits. We have the infrastructure provider recommending conditions to us. We don't have, as an authority, an adopted alternative stance or approach. So my advice would be take on board what you're all saying. It is perhaps a discussion for a wider beyond this application. I would advise against go down changing the condition specifically for this application right now until the council has adopted an alternative stance or position on that. He also mentioned earlier, Councillor Hood, around parking. We're assessing an application which is indicatively showing 564 car parking spaces, which is in line with KCC. The applicant is here. This meeting's being recorded so that any future reserve matters applications, it's very clear what the parking expectations are from members of Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council Planning Committee. Thank you.
The Williams would like to come back.
I'd also just like to point out, so obviously we now have the new MPPF and policy DM7 of that is relationship with other regulatory regimes. Paragraph 1 of that states that development proposals should be assessed on the basis of whether they would be an acceptable land use. Matters which are controlled by separate regulatory regimes may, in the context of a particular development proposal, be a material consideration where they have land use implications. Decision makers should assume, unless there's clear evidence to the contrary, that those separate regimes will operate effectively. So I think, as a council advice was in respect to the South East Water, that as decision makers, we have to make that assumption that their statutory duty to provide those services will actually operate effectively unless we have that clear evidence that's contrary. And I don't think in this particular evidence the consultation response from Southern Water actually, results in that. So I would support Mr. Moyes' sort of assertion that there isn't really any reason for us to sort of look at a Grampian condition in respect of foul sewage or drainage.
Councillor Taylor, is that a legacy hand?
No, it's a new one, if I may come back, Chairman. I wanted to pick up on what Councillor King and Councillor Hood said about sewage. I would like to see a Grampian condition imposed, but we could just use the much stronger wording from the Wheeldon decision as the condition on sewage. We cannot keep letting the sewage utility dump ... in our rivers and waterways. It's got to stop, and we've got to make a stand. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, because Councillor Taylor's raised, condition 26 is a Grampian style condition, just for members' clarity. I did previously set out that whilst it's worded slightly differently to the potable water supply condition, which is the TNBC wording condition, it is still what is called a Grampian style condition. And to be Grampian, it must be that effectively you can't commence development until such time as, i.e. conditions are submitted. So just for the point of clarity, condition 26 is a Grampian style. It's just worded in a different way. So just for the avoidance of doubt, in case there are any members of the committee who thought it wasn't a Grampian style condition, it is. I just thought it'd be worth clarifying that point.
Okay. Anybody else would like to add to the conversation? So, would anybody like to make a proposal? We have Adam's condition that maybe wanted to be added into the proposal, or is it down to me to... Councillor Davis.
Very happy to propose this. I think there are problems associated with the traffic, but I don't think they're caused by this development. They are going into the development into the area where there are problems. And there's a fundamental principle that the development itself must only be mitigate the problems raised by that. I think to that end, I'm quite content to propose this.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Or Councillor King? Thank you. Is that proposal including? Oh, I was going to say, is that?
I would very much like Mr. Councillor Mamet's condition to be part of that. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Councillor Tatton.
And we've all made it clear that the new MPPF is the officers would adjust for that.
Is it possible to have an informative about bus shelters? Would that be possible? I mean, the agent's here, so what the position is. It'd be nice to have a couple at the most convenient bus stops.
Dr. Mosley, yeah. So, Councillor Hood.
I've got a question. I'm wondering if our legal advice can help us out with this. The condition about prioritising employment opportunities for residents in Trench Ward is something I think most members would have sympathy, and I certainly agree. Isn't there a problem? Trench Ward is a small area. Wouldn't it be more sensible to say that the whole of the town of Tunbridge, rather than how is it possible for that condition to be enforceable for such a small area? I understand the intention and I agree with the intention, but it just seems to me that if you've got somebody living in Longmead Way, they're not going to be able to take part in it. They're not going to be accepted in it.
Councillor, I'm not sure that's a legal question. Mr. Bailey can come back. Myself, I think maybe we would be able to ask Councillor Mehmet and the officers, if we agree it, to come back with some more wording so that it would make it a wider area that the employment could be taken back from. So, Councillor Nielsen.
Before you go on, the presentation did include an update from the Section 106 to include heads of term relating to local employment and obligations and local supply chain commitments. So, whilst you could have a condition that, like Councillor Mehmet has suggested, there's also heads of term there that would perhaps extend further than just Trench Ward for local employment and training opportunities.
I would agree with that. That recommendation, that's up for a negotiation with the applicant. By putting it in the heads of terms, you're opening up a discussion with the applicant to look at the extent. It's very clear where members are looking at, and officers James it will be having that discussion with developers and agreeing the Section 106 is progressing. So that's why the suggestion was to put that particular condition into the heads of terms and allow that negotiation to come forward. I think James suggested that in the heads of terms initially, but I kind of would agree with that approach. To my mind, it might be better in the heads of terms and allow a greater discussion during that formation.
Councillor Mehmet.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still not a member of your committee, but I feel quite strongly that it should be specifically related to Trench Ward, because our residents are going to feel the effects of it, the most. And what we're trying to achieve is to encourage the developer to think about things like apprenticeships for our young people in Trench Ward, to go to the schools in Trench Ward and deliver some training and presentation. So, I'm sure there'll be other planning applications elsewhere in other parts of Tunbridge, and they can do the same thing for their residents. But, I believe the residents of Trench will be affected the most by it. And I think that condition should stay as it is, and seek to try and deliver those benefits for residents in Trench personally.
Thank you, Councillor Mehmet. Could the wording not highlight Trench Ward as the principal place for looking for weak people, and then if that doesn't materialize, then widen it out. Is that a possible wording? Yeah. Okay, so we have a proposal and to recommend and include Adam's condition. However, I would like to suggest that the actual wording of the condition is delegated and will come back to myself, and I will share it with councillors to make sure that we're all happy with that wording when it's ready. Oh, and in the section 106. Yeah. Yeah, do you want to, James?
I think my understanding, the recommendation is as set out in the papers, subject to the amendments to the conditions which presently refer to paragraph numbers in the 2024 MPPF, plus the condition be agreed by officers or at a delegated level, agreed with the chair of the committee, the additional condition, plus the head of term for local employment obligations as set out in the presentation.
Councillor Davis, are you happy with that as your proposal? And Councillor King, are you seconded? Right. Oh, Councillor, and include the informative. And include the informative.
Yeah, the informatives regarding bus shelters. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Could we go to a vote on this? We have the proposal in front of us. Can we do it by a show of hands? Those that are happy to grant this application? Yeah, show of hands. And those against? One. And abstains? So for those on the YouTube, we had 10 who will grant, 1 who is against, and 2 who abstain. So therefore, the application with the recommendations on the condition is approved. Thank you very much. Our next item is planning appeals. So I'd like to hand over to Mr. Bailey to give you some information on applications that we've had.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into detail on those because obviously we've still got a few issues in terms of our systems. We can't produce our appeal updates, but I will just give you an update about the Bradbourne application that this committee refused or was minded to refuse recently, in which we referred to the Secretary of State. Secretary of State has come back to us and decided to call it in for her consideration. That will be going on the public website tomorrow, and therefore that will be heard by a public inquiry, which the Secretary of State will appoint an inspectorate, and that will be heard through that process. Just to give you an update on a recent decision that you've made on that process. I haven't got any further updates on appeals, just to give you a sort of a heads up on what will come out tomorrow on that Bradbourne appeal. Okay, that's it on the appeals.
Okay, I have no urgent items. I have no part 2 items, so I will close the meeting at 9:55. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.